Lesson 18, lines and angles. So when we have a line, it's basically straight. There's no curves in it, and it never ends. So a line is straight, and it never ends, or it goes on forever in both directions. So we're going to do an example of a line. It has to have arrows on both sides. Will you please put 3 points on the line and name them A, B, C? We can name this line using 2 letters and a symbol. So let's use the letters A, B. And what we do is we draw a little baby line above the A and the B. So it has a short line, but it has to have the 2 arrows. We can use the letters B, C. We can name it that way. Or we could use the letters AC or BA or CA. We can use the word line and 2 letters, AB. So if you use the word line, you don't need the symbol. If you use the symbol, you don't need the word. But to name a line, the key point is 2 letters. That's all you use, 2 letters. Please don't use more than 2 when you're naming a line. A ray is straight. It has a point and an arrow. So one end has a point and one end has an arrow. So it cannot be curvy. Here's an example. Put a point, an arrow on the other side. We'll name the beginning point D, another point on the ray, we'll call it E. So to name a ray, you use 2 letters. The first letter has to be the end point. So if we use the word ray, we would start with D and then E. We can also use a baby ray above it. You don't draw the point, you just draw a little, just a one-way arrow going from the D to the E. So you always start with the end point first when you're naming it. A segment is a part of a line. So it is straight and it has 2 points. So each end is an end point. So it's straight. We're going to put in here that it is part of a line. And it has 2 points, well, on each end. So we can use the, wait, we're going to draw one. I didn't draw one yet. So we're going to name this point F and this one G. So you can use the word segment and 2 letters, F, G. You could name it using a baby bar right above it. You don't put dots on the end, you just put a little bar right over there, FG. Or you could do GF. The order doesn't matter when you're talking about a segment. A plane is a flat surface, and it goes on forever in all directions. So we're just going to put it never ends. Parallel, when we talk about parallel lines, we're talking about 2 lines that are in the same plane and that never touch. So if we were to draw an example of 2 parallel lines, we just draw one line, then another one that's going in the same, has the same slope, same direction, 2 arrows. These 2 lines would be considered parallel. We also have what's called perpendicular lines. Perpendicular lines intersect at right angles. That's how you know that 2 lines are perpendicular, is if you see a right angle. So we're going to draw perpendicular lines, and maybe I don't draw it exactly 90 degrees, but if I put a little box right here, then it's 90 degrees. So these 2 lines are perpendicular because there's a 90-degree angle right there. Now skew lines are two lines that are in different planes and never intersect. So I'm going to paint a picture for you in your mind, okay? We're not going to draw it, we're just going to paint it in your mind. So if you're driving along a road and the middle, the middle lines that are dotted. So imagine that those lines go on forever and they're connected, okay? Imagine that's a line. Then look off to the side of your road and you see like a telephone pole, okay? This telephone pole, imagine that it's a line, it goes down into the earth and up into the sky. If those two lines, the middle of your road and the telephone pole, are skew lines. So they're never going to intersect and they're on different planes. Okay, so that's what skew means, are different planes. Or if you look at a Kleenex box, the line right here on the bottom, okay, and this line over here in the front. See how these would never intersect if they kept going on forever and ever. They're not going to intersect. Those are called skew lines. They're on different planes. So this is a plane. One side of the tissue box would be a plane. And this one would be a plane over here. Or this one. But these two wouldn't intersect. Okay. An angle is made up of two rays with the same endpoint. So earlier in the lesson we talked about what a ray is. So it has an endpoint and an arrow. So here's an example of an angle. So on the first ray that's above, let's name this point A. We'll name the endpoint B, and a point on the second ray we'll name C. We're going to put a little arc here in the middle and call this angle 2. Okay, so there's lots of different ways we can name this angle. We can name it angle ABC. We can name it with an angle symbol, ABC. We can name it by its by the endpoint that they share. So we could call this angle B. You can only do that if there's one angle. If I had another ray right here and added a third angle, we wouldn't be able to name it angle B. You can only name that if it's one angle. We can also name it angle 2 because there's a little 2 right here. Or we can name it angle CBA, which means the order that you go around the angle doesn't matter as long as the endpoint that they share is in the middle. So if you're using the 3 letters, this endpoint that they share has to be in the middle every single time. We have different kind of angles that I think I'm going to turn the page and show you so I can fit everything else. So we're turning the page. We have what's called an acute angle. A cute little angle. So it is more than 0 degrees and less than 90 degrees. So in other words, it's between 0 and 90, non-inclusive. You can not include 0 and 90 with that. A right angle is exactly 90 degrees. And we talked about that earlier with intersecting lines that are perpendicular. An obtuse angle is an angle that is more than 90 degrees, but less than 180 degrees. And then we have what's called a straight angle, which is exactly 180 degrees. And those are lines. So by definition, when we started the lesson, we started out with the definition of a line. That line is a straight angle. A linear pair are two angles forming a straight angle. those two angles are also called supplementary because together they add to 180 degrees. So here's an example of two angles that are a linear pair. So here we have angle 1 and angle 2. These are called a linear pair because together they form a straight line. And the last definition we're going to write is for a protractor. That is a tool that we use to measure angles. Okay, that's the end of the lesson.